Very good to see you, and I'm happy to be here. And it's the first time since I came the first time since I came the first time to a movements meeting. I'll explain. The first time I came in contact with this movement was 2005, I think. And it was here. It was like 50 minutes from here. A camp meeting being organized here in North Germany. So it's the first time since then that I assist a camp meeting here in this area. And it feels strange, but nice at the same time. Just to sit in the car and drive 50 minutes only. Usually it has been like 11-hour flights to get to a camp meeting. All right, so let's start with the prayer. Dear God in heaven, we praise you and we thank you for this beautiful morning here in this place. I ask your help and guidance for this little study I intend to share. You see your people looking for truth and for answers. And I understand myself part of this. So please guide my words and my ideas. And also our communication interaction here at this camp meeting. Please bless also all those that participate from far. The translators, all the stuff. In Christ's name, amen. When I was asked to share a presentation at this camp meeting, which was long away, I was thinking about the topic to either take something that you already have prepared, that you have been sharing already, or perhaps to adapt a little bit to circumstances and to what's happening in the movement. So I decided for the second option. And I thought I would like to understand for myself a little better the history of the end of the Kingdom of the South. And then I heard Ian's presentation the other day. And it's not that he's exactly saying what I was intending to say at all. While listening along to what he was saying, at least in regard of the history that he was covering, I was thinking, where did he get my notes from? I was asking myself, where did he get my notes from? No, just the history. Yeah, because I was intending to cover same history of events. The events of October 2021, etc. So, nevertheless, I hope I can share something with you that you haven't heard yet. And for myself, I realized that I did not quite internalize, or perhaps I did not yet fully accept, which is the history of the King of the South. The history of the King of the South, specifically the end of the King of the South. I think we are driven by experience. And when we compare histories, we think that we can use these histories to understand what's going to happen in the future. To make it simple, when I'm thinking of the end of the King of the South, I'm thinking of 1991, 1989, an empire crumbling together, leaders disappearing, people dying, something big. And it's really hard to get rid of those impressions and thoughts and history that you know. So when we just remember a little bit of these histories, so this is the line of Paris. The Macedonian line. Not intending to repeat all the history. Started somewhere 307 before Christ. At some point, it goes into a final phase and a Cold War starts. And the King of the South comes to an end in 285. And we also have the line of Pyrrhus in Italy, which starts with the same year. And then we have the dates that we remember better, perhaps 275, Beneventum, and 273, and the end of this man in 272. And we realized, okay, this is also a Cold War. And well, the man really dies here. Yes, the king dies in a fight. And then we lined this up with another line, which is, well, our line, which ends in 1989. we put Beneventum parallel to 1945, when there also was started the Cold War. And we could combine all these events and histories nicely together. There's a logic that really convinces us. These stories end in a Cold War, which brings the King of the South to its end. But then there are some complications, because when you think of 1989, we understand the King of the South didn't die in that year. He died 1991. So this was something that Elates already also noted and understood. So I don't know if she had a full answer to that, but she said that we have to see this together. Which, of course, it makes things a little bit more complicated if we want to use these lines to make an application today. It's not so easy. It's not just one simple, clear date. Right? It's 1 year, but it's also 3 other years extra. Because when you think of 272, King Paris died. He definitely died on that year. The King of the South is finished. But in parallel, 1989, we would perhaps rather say this is more this event here, right? So like Arjan said yesterday, these lines perhaps can help us to understand our time. And I think many of us had perhaps similar ideas. Seems logic. To me, it is. And by the way, through this study, we also have a connection to the Sunday law, of course. Because we understand that the King of the South is going to end at the Sunday law. Well, but then when you take parallel histories, it doesn't seem so easy anymore. Maybe it's just me. I'm not understanding history fully, I acknowledge. But if you think the King of the South is dying here, I'm not fully sure if this is this or is this perhaps like this. And we arrived at 2021 because this is rough here. Sorry, Anium. And Panium, like Beneventum and like the other important wars, has to do with this animal here, right? So this is super important for us to understand this animal coming into play. It changed everything for us, and it made it possible that we could understand history at this moment. Actually, these elephants, I don't know if you looked them up once. This is a very specific type of elephant that I think doesn't exist anymore today. They had to bring them from some places, I don't know, Asia or somewhere. And they are, to my surprise, not so big. They are a little bit smaller. Anyway, so I don't know if this is something important, but it's a small detail. It is a small detail for us, but it's totally important to understand that the elephants decided the war. And once again, if you look at history, it's not so easy anymore. Because it's not like the elephants ran in and everything changed immediately. The war was won. It was just smaller movements, right? Smaller events, a little bit of running there, a little bit of dust. Anyway, but these little things that maybe in the narrative become big, important, decisive events. At least me, it helps. It helps me. Because if I'm looking today for a terrific event, like, for example, what happened in the information war in 2021, it's not that big. It's not that terrible if you look at it from our perspective. But it's still what decided the war. So I wanted to look a little bit on the issue of this type of warfare, information warfare. I don't. I realized I didn't really know what it is exactly. So I would like to share a quote with you. A couple of quotes. The first one just brings us back into this history before 2021. So it says, in the past, the US had sat on its hands as Russia waged information war. So I'm going to speak a little bit about information warfare. And here the author brings us in a time when the US was not very good in this yet. As we would say, it was the time when Russia won the wars at Heraclea, at Asculum. Because it was waging information war. It had this element of surprise in its hand, and Rome or the United States were not prepared. So let's continue. In 2014, days before Russia invaded Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula, Russia released a recording of an apparent phone conversation between senior US diplomat Victoria Nuland and ambassador to Ukraine at the time, in which Nuland disparaged the European Union. The move was part of a wave of disinformation and propaganda from Moscow surrounding the seizure of Crimea, but the Obama administration didn't react. That's because the US had opted out of the great power propaganda wars after the 9/11 attacks, Wiener said. So what was the United States' response to all of this? Wiener asked, crickets, nothing, zip. They had no response. Okay, this is the situation because of they learned of their history. They wanted to be different, and they didn't engage and learn information warfare. So when Barack Obama was asked what he would do differently in 2000 in the 2014 history, he answered what he's most concerned about looking back is that he was watching the use of information, disinformation, and misinformation. He saw it unfolding and underestimating the threat. So this was also true in the Trump administration. But it changes with Biden. And we'll see in a while what happened, why Biden did change tactics. And what are the reasons that he changed? So intelligence work happens in the shadows, but the Ukraine crisis dragged it into the sunlight. One of the most remarkable aspects of this showdown has been President Joe Biden's willingness to publicly release sensitive information on Russia's plans before they can be put into action. So, and this is why I was saying in the beginning, why I myself had an issue of accepting this event as Beneventum. Because it was just some information he released, right? Yeah, information. Okay, he said something a little bit earlier, and that's it. But let's continue reading. These disclosures are part of his strategy to stay a step ahead of Russian President Vladimir Putin. They also represent a faster, more aggressive approach to waging the information wars in the 21st century. The result has been a remarkable 4 months of diplomacy, deterrence, and American-led information warfare. Unlike the withdrawal from Afghanistan last year, it was executed almost flawlessly. Even the Germans and other European nations highly dependent on Russian supplied gas signed into the playbook 4 months of American-led information warfare. So I understand now that what Biden did was something extremely big and important. He literally changed the mode of warfare that has been used by the employed by the US for a long time. And we'll see that he not only changed it exactly in this moment in time, he not only changed it, but he also put the United States in leadership in this type of warfare worldwide. Uh, they made a lot of things, we'll see in a little moment, in order to become the world leader in information warfare. They made a lot of things. They changed a lot of things. So it was not that he just gave some information away beforehand. So before we see a little bit what he did, let's read the definition of information warfare. Information warfare is a multifaceted concept that encompasses the strategic use of information and communication technologies to achieve military objectives and influence adversaries. It has evolved significantly in recent years, particularly with the rise of digital technologies and the internet, which have transformed traditional warfare paradigms into more complex forms of conflict that include psychological operations, cyber warfare, and disinformation campaigns. At its core, information warfare involves the manipulation of information to gain a competitive advantage over opponents. So in this information warfare with Russia, what Russia has been so good in is telling a story. Creating a narrative. And Russia was doing this once again, once more, when it came to the border of Ukraine. And it was incredible. But perhaps you remember back then, Russia came to the border with its troops. And it still was kind of not so sure. People were not sure. We were not sure. I wasn't sure that they really will attack. How can they accomplish this? Well, they put their tanks here. They put their flag here on the border, and they put lots of troops on the border. So through the narrative, they were able to make many people believe that they were there for whatever reason, but not in order to attack. I don't know if you remember, but I wasn't sure either when I heard the news. They will attack now. They will not attack. How come that people in the world, that leaders, that nations were not sure Russia would attack, even if they were there with all their troops? And this is because they are uh, they are just experts in information warfare. They are so good that we were not fully convinced. So when doing this, what we know is what happened. That Biden didn't buy the lies. And if you engage information warfare, then you have to work on this level. Because Russia had interesting excuses what they would do there. And they were preparing other excuses in order to invade without people blaming them. Uh, One thing that we know is, for example, what we call false flag operations. You say, "Oh, we have been attacked. This is why we now have to defend, and this is why we go in." Many of these things were being prepared, but Biden personally had some experience already, and he had learned from some stories where he was involved. Yeah, either personally or as a politician. There's the Iraq crisis with the weapons of mass destructions. I think Arjan mentioned this yesterday. Not sure. But what happened there is that the US had a narrative and it was not true what they said, and the world didn't believe them. The world didn't believe them anymore. So they had lost credibility. But then there was the Crimea crisis, and we already saw the answer from Obama, that he really did not take so seriously enough what happened then. And the information warfare at that time, the United States underestimated. And then we have the 2016 elections with the Russian interference. So these things were very clear to Joe Biden, and he really didn't want to repeat. He really learned from these events. So when it came to the crisis in 2021, he realized that he had to behave differently. And this is why he initiated this procedure in order to engage in the information warfare. There's something that he did that it's called pre-bunking. You do not wait until the evidence is so clear that everybody sees it. So this is what he did. He told what Russia is going to do. And this is a tactic which really complicates things for Russia. Because Russia has less possibilities to tell its story any longer. When you say Russia is going to attack, Russia can do two things. It can still attack, or it can change its plans. But as we know, Russia wants to attack. So this the whole operation is to attacking. So as we saw, Russia did a lot of things in order to convince the West that it's not going to do this. But it's obviously super difficult to convince the enemy when he is already telling the truth that this is not the truth. Okay, so the effort to win the information warfare as we see, which came from the experiences that the US had in recent times with Russia. As a result of what Russia did in all these years and what happened in all these years. and the United States realizing it was not prepared. They started actually like 2014, 2019. They started with a lots of efforts to change this type of warfare. Which means is they had to release national strategies. What I'm just trying to say is they systematically tried to become good in information warfare. So what for us is here just Biden in 2021 denouncing what Russia is going to do. This is what we see, right? Biden is telling something. But already 2017, the US releases a national security strategy. 2018, a national defense strategy. They developed this further, 2022. And all of these official strategies, these plans include a focus on information warfare. So this is the same as if you would be here in this history in the War of Italy. With the battles of Heraclea, the Battle of Asculum. And in all these battles, Pyrrhus won because he used elephants. Right? And these battles we align with 2018. 2019. What I'm just saying is the Romans in this time, remember what they did? So in order to fight against the elephants, they built some tools or some counter defenses, right? Yeah. In order to damage the knees of the elephants, in order to hurt them. They tried, I think they used dogs. They tried many things. And the US is, we see, definitely doing the very same thing. They tried to capacitate themselves to be able to fight against Russia's information warfare. So they do not only create these strategies they create units, of course, in the military, in every single department. They have special information warfare units. But they also do something which is extremely big and important. They, I don't know, to put this here. Number one. This should be one. This should be two. they do they work together with big data. Artificial intelligence, machine learning. They work together with private sector companies and with academic institutions. So what the US did, and this is, I think, the step that really makes them win this war. Because information warfare, as the name says, it's about information. And information is in the hand of the one who tells the information and who gathers information. And of course, we all know that the big private social media companies they have the information in their hands. This is why the Russians use X, for example, to tell their story. So the US decided to cooperate and to work together with these private companies. And well, I think we start to see what this will cause. So when I was thinking about the end of the King of the South, he lost through information warfare. And this is what we saw 2021. Because the advantage that Ukraine and the West got through the information warfare by the United States is so huge, so big, that this is because Ukraine is still there. The West had a critical couple of weeks, days and weeks time in order to change its mind. Seine Meinung zu ändern. So it had time to find the correct disposition in order to how to react against Russia. Just in time, it changed and understood that Russia is not a trustworthy country. And just on time, they decided to stand against Russia. So one of the problems that I have here with this story, how can we understand that the King of the North, who's doing something good, because he wins over something bad, he's winning over something that we understand as a threat to democracy. The US, who was able to defend and free Ukraine, basically. How is it that how is it that the King of the North, through doing this, is at the same time finding its own end? Yes. Yeah. No. It's coming to an end. Because the Sunday law marks the end of the King of the South. But it also marks the end of the King of the North. So how can it be that if you win, you lose? Do I make myself clear? I think, is this, yeah, what I want to say? Because the US is not going to be the glorious land any longer, right? It comes to an end. So if you see how the King of the South died or ended in all these stories, at least if you take the line of the Paris in Italy, we mark information war, information war, information war. But here, when he dies, it's not an information war that kills him. It was not an elephant who killed Paris. So I was wondering if of this information warfare, which has been raging in our time, how is it connected to the end of the King of the North? Of course, I'm not saying that he's dying, disappearing at the Sunday Law event, right? But what I mean is that this nation crumbles at the Sunday Law. Its institution crumble. Or as we also say, the ship sinks. And there's an interesting link, and this is coming already almost to the end of the presentation. Because as we have seen, the United States opted to work together with big data. And if you've seen the news, big data companies are making headlines at the moment. So let's jump to the last set of quotes. So this is from January 8th. This is a very new development. And it's about Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg burst on the national political scene a little over a decade ago to promote and fund left-leaning issues he cared about, such as drug legalization and reducing mass incarceration. Only that. First sentence. Mark Zuckerberg, you have a different numbering. Sorry, give me a second. This is 5. Jump one sentence. He kicked Mr. Trump off Facebook and Instagram for 2 years in light of the storming of the Capitol on January 6th. But now, having kissed the ring of incoming President Trump in the form of a dinner, the appointment of a professional fighting executive and Trump ally to the board of his company, and a 1 million donation by Meta to Mr. Trump's inaugurational fund, Mr. Zuckerberg has finally come full circle. On Tuesday, he announced that he is dialing back the fact-checking operation designed to combat misinformation on Meta platforms, the kind of fake news accused of potentially helping to elect Mr. Trump the first time. This represents a huge win for right-wing groups that have long argued that efforts to combat misinformation are forms of censorship and a middle finger to regulators. It's a devastating blow to the truth. Okay, he announced that he basically is ending this this strategy of Meta to control and fact check information being spread on its platforms. So what people understand is this will impact the truth in general. It will help spreading misinformation. Next quote. On Tuesday, Zuckerberg announced in an Instagram reel that Meta was replacing its fact-checking program with an X-style community notes feature. The company is also revisiting its rules to allow more criticism on certain groups, including immigrants and transgender people, letting users see more civic content in their feeds and moving its content review operations from California to Texas to avoid, he said, the appearance of political bias. So in Texas, this is also where X, Elon Musk has also its seat, its company. The next quote, Meta on Tuesday said it would drop some of its rules protecting LGBTQ people. The changes include allowing users to share allegations of mental illness or abnormality when based on gender or sexual orientation, given political and religious discourse about transgenderism and homosexuality. So what the article said in the beginning is that Zuckerberg, he stood up to defend more leftist ideas, to defend and protect minorities. He wanted to defend the truth, and he kicked out Donald Trump. But what he's doing now, very quickly, in a couple of weeks, he sides totally with the ideology of Trump. And he's very clearly taking away protection from minority groups. Let's see a little bit of Elon Musk. This is from the end of last year, November 24. Under heavy pressure from the right and with the help of ex-owner Elon Musk, the leading tech platforms opened the floodgates for propaganda to spread unchecked. This was just before the elections. Um, well, just leave it here. Not, I think we don't need to share much about Musk. We have a pretty good idea what he's been doing. So he turned X into his mouthpiece. If you have X, you see that you will see a lot of tweets. You will always get tweets from Musk in your feed. So let's jump to the last quote. There is no question that Zuckerberg, Bezos, and Cook all want to avoid the ire of Trump, but that is only part of the story. They have empires of their own to preserve and expand. They see an opportunity to cement a tech oligarchy in which the leaders' favorite billionaires run the country from us. Why shouldn't it work for them? I think that's a widely dystopian vision, one that most Americans reject. These are the anti-democratic forces of concentrated power, and they are all aligning in the open in front of our faces. And it's chilling in its own way, but it's also very clarifying to have them all standing on the same side. Zuckerberg, of course, is Meta. It's the boss of Meta. Bezos is the boss of Amazon. Jeff Bezos also did something recently. He quit basically he quit the critique on Trump in his newspaper, the Washington Post. And Tim Cook is the boss of Apple. And he met with Trump, and he also gave a $1 million donation to the inauguration fund from his own pocket money. So this is why the author says they're all standing now on the same side. They all do something in order to be in favor with Trump. The results, as we can see, will impact the truth, will impact minority groups, will impact equality, will be a blow against feminism. And it is interesting. And I think this is another topic, but I was seeing this in light of information warfare. Because Russia wins information warfare because of telling lies, basically. Yeah, it is lies that they spread, false stories. And this is why they were winning the information warfare. So the question is, how can you win the information warfare? How can you be better than Russia? How can you be better than Russia? And what Biden basically did is he was telling the truth. But in the long run, what we are seeing is that winning the information warfare working together with the tech companies using AI, using technology, the King of the North is getting the upper hand in this warfare. But instead of continue to tell the truth, the development shows that they're doing the same thing as Russia has been doing. They will tell lies. And I think this helps me to understand why the King of the North, who is like winning at the same time, is losing. So just recapping a little bit, I've been trying to see if the history of the end of the King of the South can help us. In order to understand Sunday law, coming events. It doesn't seem so easy. There are some complications in these histories. It helped me to see that the United States, the role of the United States, it helped me to understand what they are doing and how to bring in line the war that they are winning at the same time is producing or is taking part of the story of their ending. So thank you for your attention. I invite you to close with a prayer. Dear Lord, we praise you, fighting ourselves in this history that we realize is important. Amidst of critical events. Let us take your hand that you guide us through these events. Bless our movement and bless this meeting. And help that we can take advantage of the Sabbath day in order to hear you and do your will. In Christ's name, amen.